Hello everyone, just Gordon here, and we are back in the Beekse Bergen today because on the 22nd of October a new area for the White Rhino opened. So we are here with a zoo tour update. So yeah, as I said, new White Rhino area. We'll be looking at that today, and we're also going to look at some other small changes, but let's start with the White Rhinos. So we are starting off here at the Africa Village, which is where we enter the new area from. We'll look at all of the implications that this has for the rest of the walking route later, but now let's just check out this new area. You can tell that they're still finishing up all of the details, as the directional sign was actually still being assembled when I was here. Also, you can see that all of the planting is yet to be done. This will be done at a later date. And lastly, the area to the right as we enter is currently unfinished as well. At some point in the future, when they get to like phase 2 of this project, this will be another terrace, similar to the one beside the elephant field, only with an even more incredible view. And what a view that is! As we move into the new area, we are immediately greeted by its main selling point. A huge field with a sightline of almost 500 meters, all the way into the European woods section of the car safari. So you'll actually be able to see both safari boats and safari buses pass by in the distance behind the rhinos. So that is really, really cool. To achieve this sightline, what used to be two separate fields separated by an elevated walkway have been combined into one even bigger field by flattening that elevation which separated them. So the walking route now goes around the field instead of through it, basically. And the separation area of the rhinos, which used to be just a small square pen next to the stalls, also got expanded a fair amount. This makes it a lot more comfortable for the rhinos when they need to stay separated for extended periods of time, like when a mother needs to stay with their young, or a new rhino is being introduced to the herd. They can do so a lot more comfortably now. The separation area has, as you can see, a bunch of trees protected by rocks. It will also have a large mud bath, which will be able to be drained to prevent any tragedies like the one that we saw at Wildlands last year. The mud bath, it's really cool. It's going to flow underneath this bridge into what used to be the pelican enclosure, but this is now the new springbok enclosure. The springbok used to be on one of the two fields together with blesbok, but now they have their own space over here. Beekse Bergen actually has one of the few successful breeding groups of springbok, and they hope that giving them a little bit more privacy by putting them alone will make them even more successful as a breeding group. So looking forward to that, I guess. One thing this enclosure definitely achieves is that the guests can now get much closer to the springbok and get a much better view at them. So yeah, that's great. The blesbok are no longer going to be with the springbok. As I said, they will be out on the big field together with the rhino, common eland, and deal with Tutsi cattle. A great benefit to this new layout is that the rhinos and the elands no longer have to go underneath the walking route to get to their outdoor enclosure. This used to be the case, and the rhinos in particular were not a fan of having to go under the bridge every morning and back in the evening. So this new layout gives them a lot less stress as a result, which is really nice. The Watusi do still have to go under a new bridge, on the new walking route, but they don't have a lot of trouble with that. Another thing that they changed about the field itself is its elevation. A large part of the field got raised up to prevent rainwater from congregating in the middle of the field, turning it into like a big swampy area. That shouldn't happen now, so that's pretty cool. Now, the new walking path isn't just an improvement to the viewing of the rhino and the springbok, it also brings us a lot closer to this backstage area. I mean, the Bachelor Himadrias baboon group. It's pretty unique to see a bachelor group of these animals, and it's nice that we get to appreciate them at a much closer distance now. You used to walk kind of by, yeah, well, actually just a lot further away. You could see them in the distance, but honestly without some binoculars you weren't gonna see much of them. And now you walk like right across the moat from them, and you really get to appreciate this. It's cool to see. It's nice that we get to appreciate a bit more. I've already heard several other guests show their appreciation for it. They're like, oh wow, it's so nice that we get to see this now. So yeah, that's really cool. The habitat itself hasn't changed much, though some new bits of shelter were added a while ago already in preparation for this new walking route. So yeah. Another thing we can actually see in the baboon habitat now that we're looking from this side instead of just the other side, is that these termite mound things actually have a little door in it. So it's pretty cool. But yeah, opposite to the baboons, we're gonna go back to the rhino field for a moment, where we have this beautiful panorama viewing point of the entire rhino enclosure. And here you can really just take in just how much space these animals have now. It might be one of my favorite views in the zoo now. It is just really, really cool. I'm also a really big fan of the fence here. It's a tiny little detail, but I just like it a lot. And what's also really cool to see here is that we can see some remnants of the old walking route, mainly the little stream that used to go beside it. And this stream had to stay because it is actually part of the drainage of the flamingo habitat. So the water from the flamingo habitat gets drained into this stream and goes to like the water of the boat safari. So a few bridges have been made over this little stream for the rhinos to cross, and I think it looks really cool this way. It's a nice little feature of the habitat. From here, something else that we can see in the distance is that the road connecting the cheetah enclosure of the car safari to the rhino field, well, actually it no longer connects to the rhino field. It used to go through the area that the common elands usually hung out, kind of a separate bit of the field, but now it goes straight to the Africa village without ever going through the habitat. So trucks delivering goods to the Africa village no longer have to disturb the animals in this enclosure, which is really nice. And yeah, the last new thing about this area is that the old path of the walking route here was brick, but slowly but surely the entire zoo is being converted into this thing that they call like a green road, which you can find all over the zoo now, and yeah, now it is here as well. So really nice. Get some consistency. So that's basically all you get to see as a visitor, but me and some other subscription holders were allowed to see the enclosure a day earlier, and we got a much closer look at it. So let's have a look at all of that before we move on. As we passed through the gorilla area that we saw in the last update for the Beekse Bergen, I got told that this area is actually subject to change soon as well. The current path is too narrow for an ambulance to pass through, which is quite important if there's ever an emergency. Apparently it's kind of, they strive to have all of the guest paths also accessible by a car or an ambulance for that reason. So yeah, the stone retaining wall we can see on the right is going to be removed, allowing the path to be widened. I'm not sure if it was always planned to be done this way or if this was like an oversight that they're correcting now, but it's pretty interesting nonetheless. Something to consider maybe in your Planet zoos as well. Is this accessible by car? Behind this little hill that has the retaining wall, we can also see that a staff road has been added, allowing keepers to get over here from the giraffe field of the car safari. As I mentioned earlier, the rhino field used to be accessible from the cheetah habitat, but that connection has been severed, so now a new access point has been created from this side instead. So that goes to the second primate house, or the middle primate house, as well as the backstage of the rhino habitat that we saw just now. As we enter this staff area, we get a glimpse of the backstage of the Watusi cattle and the springbok, which was really, really cool to see. I always love seeing backstages, so it was really awesome to see this stuff. It's kind of messy over here at the Watusi especially. This is a super old building. This was actually the old rhino stall, probably way back in the day. I didn't care to ask, but I think this might have gone back to like the point where the rhinos were also part of the car safari, like way back in the day, before we even had a walking route. So I'm not sure if it's actually that old, but it's certainly pretty old. So yeah, still being in use for the Watusi, so that's pretty neat. But we're moving along from this backstage area. We can see where the Watusi would normally be let into the habitat. They're going to go through this tunnel. But on the left of this tunnel, we actually have a big hole. And what's that for, you may wonder? Well, luckily we came across the zoo's designer, Rick Merks, who we've also seen on the channel here with the Rhino stall video I did like a year or year and a half ago. Rick told us that this hole's purpose is to store water pumped out of the tunnel that the Watusis use to cross under the walking path in case it ever rains. Like you don't want that tunnel to be flooded and cause the Watusis not to be able to get onto their field. So the water is pumped out into this hole so that the tunnel stays clear. But anyway, crossing under the bridge, we can get a close look at the field. It's just really surreal to be walking around where rhinos would be walking around like literally the next day, I think. But we don't see much new things here that we couldn't see from the walking route itself, outside of the construction equipment still hard at work to finish everything up. We can get a bit of a closer look at the holding areas of the Rhino, like behind the stalls. There's also this bench here, which I think they removed after we got this tour, but it's been here for the longest times. Like you could see it from the old walking route, and I never knew why it was here. Like I don't know if it had a purpose or it just like never got removed or something. Really weird. No, not the faintest idea as to why it was there. But anyway, we're gonna go up to all of these logs that we can see. Behind them we can find the holding area for the Blessbok and the common eland, which were kept inside of their stalls so that they wouldn't be bothered by all of the construction noises and stuff like that. But through here we can get to where that backstage road ends up, and we can actually look at some of this backstage that you could normally only see through some of the trees from the Africa village. So now I could see, for instance, that they actually have a little kitchen inside of here, so it's pretty neat. We didn't enter any of the stalls, of course, as they had animals inside of them. So we just walked past this custom transport box that the Beekse Bergen has here to move rhinos. And that's where we basically ended the tour. So it was super awesome to see all of this stuff up close and get to hear more of the story behind it. I always love hearing stuff like that. I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. But yeah, now we're here. The inside of the stalls haven't changed much. But of course the view into the separation area changed a lot because of the changes to said area. You can see a bit more of that retaining wall of the terrace, which will be beside the mud pool. Another thing we notice here is that the poles around the separation area have actually been increased in height, as nowadays it's recommended to use poles of about 1.6 meters in height to assure that no rhino can get out. Also, apparently, looking at this sign, I think the right rhino got a new donor, because there used to be only one donor sign on here, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, that is the new area. But of course, the addition of it has some implications on the walking route. Of course, since that elevated path going straight through the habitat has been removed, you can no longer go here after you see the cheetahs. It's currently still fenced off, but if you look behind the fence, you can actually see that there will be like a rock barricade and the area is not going to be accessible for guests anymore. This decreases the visibility of the cheetahs a fair bit, but it's understandable since this path now ends up at where that new Backstage road goes. So it wouldn't offer that great of a view of the rhinos anyway. I do wonder what they'll do with the insect hotel and the signs that used to be around it. It remains to be seen. So with this area being blocked off, visitors are now forced to go through the Africa village to move along the main walking route. This didn't used to be the case, and because of that the Africa village was a little bit of a forgotten place. So it's great that people are being forced to go here, not because it's great for the zoo because they might buy something at one of the food points here, but just to help people see everything on their visit without having to do multiple loops around the same areas. I'm not a huge fan of that. Also, the Africa Village is a nice central, like, recognizable point, so being forced to go through it kind of helps people going through the zoo to be like, oh hey, we're back here. So past the Africa Village, we of course have the entrance of the new area, but also the springbok habitat, which can be viewed from the other side of the lake as well, just like you could with the pelicans in the past. And it's crazy just how different this area now looks compared to the pelican habitat it used to be. Like, it's so much more open, there's a lot less foliage. I'm sure some of it will grow back, but yeah, it's really interesting to see what they've done to it, and I can't wait to see the springbok in here. Something that they have done really well in here, in my opinion, is the chain link fence. Like, from the other side, it's pretty visible, but from this side, it actually kind of drops below the hill for a large part of the view. So it kind of gives the impression that people walking along the new route are inside of the springbok enclosure, and it kind of connects everything together a bit more, which, yeah, I'm always a big fan of. I really like this kind of view. At the back of the enclosure here, we can also see a number of changes made to the backstage of this habitat. The springbok have like this separate area that connects their stables to their new habitat, which is completely blocked off from guests and stuff. So yeah, just changing it to the needs of its new inhabitants. So all cool. So yeah, that is everything there is to see about the new area, as far as I know at least. So yeah, let's discuss it a little. Overall, I would say I like it quite a lot. I hope you do too. Just the views as you enter the area is really cool. The use of naturalistic materials, and most of all, it just solves a lot of logistical problems that the zookeeper struggled with for a long time, which I'm pretty sure was the main goal of this renovation. Another goal that they had was also to capture the same feeling that the Rhino field had before 2006, when some of its space was given to the chimpanzees and gorillas. Back before 2006, you could actually see the rhinos across the meerkat habitat, since the view wasn't blocked by the primate house and the elevated path. Though I've never seen that particular view personally, I can imagine it was pretty incredible. And yeah, that's a feeling that they tried to recapture with this renovation. Now, the promotional messages for this area gave the impression that you would be at the eye level of the rhinos with 2C and common eland, and also mentioned that the new route would be very different from the elevated walkway there used to be. So with all of that combined, I was kind of expecting something pretty similar to the black rhino area, where you have like a wide view of the savanna habitat along the entire path, whilst being level with the habitat, which is super impressive. And it makes the habitat and the animals feel even bigger. And I do have to say that the new white rhino area is not quite like that. To me, the habitat feels a little bit narrow and a lot less open than the black rhino area, due to it being like encased in these log fences on one side and stone walls of the elevated walkway on the other. And that kind of takes away just a little bit from that incredible sightline. It's still a great view as you're walking through the area, and I can't wait to enjoy it from that terrace in the future. But then again, for most of the route, you're walking along the narrowest part of the enclosure, so when you're looking into the enclosure, things feel a little bit smaller, mostly due to you being at an elevated position as well. And that was also something that surprised me, like how much of the path is elevated. Especially considering how it was advertised as being like eye level and completely different than before. The elevation is not as high as it was before, but a lower view could have been a better guest experience. But that's just the thing, guest experience, and kind of minor details within the guest experience at that. The area still looks amazing overall, and I doubt that many guests would really consciously care about the things I just mentioned, if they would care at all. On top of that, I would have to quote this from the designer, the base of this habitat does not get designed from a guest perspective. It's always about that of the animals. That always comes first, so of course that also took priority in designing this habitat. And it does so perfectly. The rhinos no longer needing to pass under the bridge, the Watusis of course needing a bridge to pass under so that they don't have to build new stalls for them and stuff. those were all necessities in terms of animal welfare and animal management. And the visitor side of the habitat needs to be built around those requirements, on top of needing to fit along existing elements like the moat for the Himadryas baboon, the flamingo aviary, and the bridge going over the chimpanzee habitat. It all needs to align with that. So of course that resulted in what we got. It kind of needed to be an elevated path like that. So yeah, it's interesting to see how those requirements kind of translate into the final design and the consequences that it has. Not criticisms, just observations. I am in love with this area, don't worry. Anyway, enough about the new area. Let's look at some of the other changes that popped up around the zoo since the last zoo tour update. There aren't that many, but we'll get through them, starting with some of the more interesting stuff and then going down to small things. So let's start at Congo, where 2 new things have been added. Next to the boat docks, a bar has been built up. I think when the Beekse Bergen first started their Zomer event last year, they put up a tent with some drinks here. And I suppose it was a pretty big success as they built a more permanent facility for it. I noticed it last time. There was like a grill sort of thing inside of it as well, which I think they can remove or place whenever they feel appropriate. But I do like the look of this building a lot. It fits in with other things in the area, like the boat dock itself and the little ranger station inside of the lemur area. And I just love how it looks. Like, I really like the use of bottles inside of some of the walls and stuff. That just looks really cool and it's such a nice touch. So really, really, really nice. I like it a lot. While we're here on the other side, in the last update we saw that the sea lions had been replaced with seals, and today we get to see that they have once again been replaced by pelicans. And they have to move out of their old enclosure to make room for the springbok. And now they are in here, and I think the plan is also to release them onto the big lake so that you'll be able to see the pelicans from the boat safari, but I haven't seen that myself yet, so I'm not sure if that plan is still up and running. And it's a bit weird, honestly, to see them in this enclosure. I guess it works. I mean, I don't know, I'm curious how long they'll stay here, or if they'll change this habitat a bit more to suit them better, because right now it feels a little bit temporary. But yeah, on the other side of the Congo area, after passing through the giraffe shop, we see another new thing here. It's one of the photo studios. We saw one of these in the last Beekse Bergen update as well. That one was at the entrance in the little booth. This one is a bit more integrated into the existing structure of the giraffe shop and Congo restaurant, and it matches the style of the outside of the restaurant pretty well as well, which I think is neat. It's really well done. Clearly these photo studios are pretty successful. I've seen them pop up in a number of zoos, most notably Beekse Bergen, and Blijdorp has a couple of them as well, so I think they're doing well. Anyway, moving from one catering area to another, next up is the Afrikadorp. The Ola Swirls hut that used to be here got a new interior. It's now a bit more of a regular Ola building, not a Swirls building specifically. Yeah, they ditched the swirls for more standard ice cream items, and I feel like they also took away some of the more egregious Ola swirl themed decorations on the hut itself. I think they painted them over. I know that the zoo's designer absolutely hated those paintings, so I think he gladly painted over them. But yeah, also in the Afrikadorp, small detail, but there's all these cute little trees in these square planters that I think are really, really cool. So anyway, next catering area, we also have the entrance. Here we have the Kalangala, which we saw in the previous update that it got a little paint job. Well, apparently they weren't done yet, because since then it also received a cool mural sporting the name of the shop, of course. And there's also a sign here now for the canoe safari, which was a thing that you could do during the summer. Sadly, I didn't get around to it, but it's basically going like the route of the boat safari, but in a canoe. So yeah, that does seem really cool. Maybe they'll do it again next year, and I might try it then. Also here at the entrance plaza, there's a truck for French fries, which has been there for a while, and they encased it in some wood recently to make it a little bit more presentable, I guess. I do believe the zoo has some plans to make this a bit more permanent, like add some more permanent shops and things here instead of, yeah, a truck, basically. And then lastly, for the topic of catering, pretty much all of the food and drink stands in the zoo have received these new menu signs. So you can find them all over. I'm gonna have to make these because they're pretty simple but cool. Another interesting change is what I'm gonna be calling the anti-German rope. If you haven't heard, a few German students walked into a backstage area, which led to the car safari, and eventually, as they kept walking, the drive-through habitat of the cheetahs, which these people also went into despite clear warning signs, even in German, about staying in your car, dangerous animals, that sort of stuff. So the path they used to enter this area has been further blocked off now by a rope and an extra sign in Dutch, German, and English reminding you, stay away from here. Should this rope have been here all along? Maybe. I do agree that zoos should always do as much as possible to prevent situations like this. But even then, I still think it is mostly the people's fault in this case. Like, even if you're not familiar with the zoo, it's abundantly clear that where they went is not a place you're supposed to go. And especially once you get to the car safari, you should realize you messed up and just turn around. So yeah, that's just my 2 cents. I'm not going to have a strong opinion on this sort of stuff, because it's not my business. But on the lighter note, I did see some cute enrichment here in the cheetah habitat. I thought I'd share with you guys. There was this little basket, there was a box, of course cats love boxes, and there were also these cardboard tubes just hanging from some trees, which I thought was fantastic. While we are in the area, something I forgot to mention last time, or I didn't notice or something, was that there actually used to be a fence in between this cheetah habitat and the one next to it, because it used to be an African wild dog habitat, so probably to not scare the cheetahs with the presence of the African wild dogs, this fence was put up, but now that they're both cheetah habitats, it doesn't need to be there anymore, so it is gone. So on the other side of the zoo, again, at the hippo aviary, which is across the tigers and the crocodile and hippo building, I was finally able to go inside of this viewing point of the aviary. It has been closed for forever. At first it was the bird flu, then some birds made a nest in the viewing area itself, so they had to keep it closed. Then I think the bird flu hit again. Really, I thought I'd never be able to go into this viewing area again, but I was so glad that I could, because the view from here is so amazing, and just the open thing, no netting, just being able to enjoy these birds. I love it so much. Sadly, last time I went, it was closed again due to the bird flu, so it was fun while it lasted, I guess. Back at the entrance at the Vriendenkraal, the building of the Wildlife Foundation, a new adoption sign has been added. This sign features the name of every person who has adopted an animal, with a little picture of the animal they adopted. I think it's nice that every adoption parent gets an equal amount of attention this way. The previous signs had all of the people grouped by animal, so if you adopted a popular animal, your name would end up in a very large group, and now every name has equal representation. I think it's a very good thing. What I'm not sure about are the colors. Personally, I quite like the aesthetic of the old sign, and I think it's good if the Wildlife Foundation separates themselves a little bit from the zoo. They might have very strong ties with the zoo, but I'd like to avoid people getting the impression that they are collecting money for the zoo. While this is not the case, they are a non-profit organization aiding animals in the wild. So, yeah, by having the sign be the same colors of the zoo, I feel like that might give the wrong message to some people. Now, last but not least, a new fish feed dispenser has been added to the Sitatunga habitat. So now that all of these hungry little boys shall be hungry no more. Absolutely incredible. So that's it. That's all of the major / minor changes that I noticed throughout the park. There are some things going on outside of the park, like outside of the main zoo. Like there's a new hotel being built on the safari resort. The vacation park has been renamed to Lake Resort instead of the vacation park. So some of the signs have also been updated to reflect that, but I haven't had a chance to really check out any of those things, and they're also kind of outside of the scope of my recreation, so yeah, I care a little less about them. Not the resort. The resort is really cool, but I've never been to the Lake Resort, and I don't see myself go there soon, or anytime soon. So anyway, maybe we'll check it out in the future, but for now, I hope you enjoyed this video. It's long enough as it is, so see you guys next time. Bye bye.